Welcome to Coastside Poetry. Thanks to those of you who've zoomed in and those who are watching on YouTube. We meet either physically or virtually on the second Tuesday of every month to celebrate spoken poetry. I'm Diane Lee Moomey, and Steve Long and I are your hosts this evening. Our featured poet event is being recorded and streamed live onto YouTube as we speak. So anyone can look at it later. We'll be posting the link on our website, coastsidepoetry.org. This evening, we welcome San Mateo County Poet Laureate, Aileen Cassinetto. Aileen is the author of 2 poetry collections and 3 chapbooks, and her work has been featured most recently in Poetry Magazine and Marsh Press Review. She was named an Academy of American Poets Laureate Fellow in 2021. Please welcome Aileen Cassinetto.
Thank you, Diane and Steve. Thank you for holding this space. Good evening, friends. I'm so happy to see all of you. Happy New Year. What a wonderful way to start off 2022 with Coastside Poetry. It's really such an honor to be here. This is my, I think, 3rd time, and everyone has just been really, very supportive. And my term is ending officially in June. And I wanted to thank all of you for being with me on this journey. It has been such a rewarding experience, and I strongly encourage you all to, if you live in San Mateo County, to send in your application. Now I'd like to begin a poem I wrote last year in honor of all the women who inspired my journey thus far, and it's titled Legacy. To tell her story, you must know when to put courage in a matchbox and conceal it in a loaf of bread. You must learn how a message betokened deliverance when courage is simply a word someone wrote on a slip of paper, and the sweet scent of bread could no longer sustain you. You must grasp your other hand with what grit remains, growing and unyielding. To tell her story, you must walk in her shoes. If forced out of your leased farmland, don't forget to bring rice if you can pack only what you can carry. And if your mother did not speak inside the bus with the windows covered with brown paper on the way to the barracks, it was only because she was praying that you would not be housed in the horse stall with the manure whitewashed over. And if you were, she was deciding what to do about the smell. To tell her story, you must remember the landscape from behind barbed wire fences. You must gaze at your body and know its history. Look beneath the tender, ridged scars and see the bone protruding out of your right arm and hole the size of a football on your right thigh, wondering how the lights never went out. You must look at the image of your grandmother with the weight of rammed earth against what you survived. To tell her story, you must say a prayer, not of sorrow, but of grace. You must loosen the earth, pick daffodils to the base of the stem. Remember your roots and ordinary days and the grit under your fingernails, the way your grandmother taught you. This next poem is titled Pagbabalik, which means return or reaffirmation in Filipino. It's about ancestors, their struggles and their courage, and what we can still learn from them today. Pagbabalik. My father returned twice to the river, now steeper than when he first knew it. Its wild waters meandering with the widest bends. So much of who he was shaped by movement outside my line of sight. So much struggle upriver before reaching gravel and calmer waters. My ancestors, the river dwellers, were known in the history of song to trade silk cotton for cauldrons and betel nuts for iron pots. But so much of how they lived depended on mangroves and women warriors who read Kawi and Sanskrit ciphers, scripts on copper, the bluest star cluster. This last poem is my winter poem. It celebrates the many ways in which we connect with each other and the world around us. Tree lighting at Fremont Park in the second year of the pandemic. May we ever constellate around each other like a blessing, a season of giving. May we bear witness to moments that bring waxwing closer to mistletoe berry, wintering sparrow to crab apple and bramble. More of this and each other, of giving thanks for the evergreen oak, acorn bearer and emblem of power, of honoring the Ohlone who relied on the oak tree and ground acorns into a meal and gifted each other their finest flour. As we constellate, may we find sweetness in what we've dried and roasted, chestnuts, figs. From my hand to yours and yours to mine, these grains like a prayer for winter. Thank you for listening.
Aileen, I hope that doesn't mean that's the end of your reading.
Oh, I prepared one. I just looked at the reading, the wait list, and I'm hoping to hear other poets read as well. I did prepare something else if there's time in the end.
Well, we hope our features will read for 20 to 25 minutes. Then we have the open mic, and then you would read one at the end. Is that too much to ask?
Oh, no, not at all.
Give us some more. It was only 6 minutes.
I'm sorry. Let me pull up something else. Well, this one I'd like to dedicate to you, Diane, because it's I actually wrote this for the first Coastside poetry reading where I featured, and it is titled in Half Moon Bay. But first, before that, I'm sorry. Let me read first this poem that was published in Poetry Magazine in summer last year. And it's called Tanaga, which is a form of indigenous Filipino poetry. Ocean-born, I was always bound to come home to a sea that has no memory of me, save for my stars, long-lived and feather-like. So close to the coastline, I hear sounds as they move just above the water's surface. The rare glide upward, the slide and swing, the extra note. Balut, Penoy, Balut, I hear your heartbeat this far from your shore. What we saved at the water's edge, we also left behind, had hoped to endure. Cone shells, red corallines, oh love of mine. This next poem is titled Poetry Please. It was the first poem I read when I was appointed Poet Laureate. Poetry Please. And when we speak, let it be said that nothing is lost in translation, that our words are true and tenable, that we understand the meaning of sea, the Ohlone word for water, which is you, The Ohlone knew this. They were first of this county, born of seawater and woven reeds, to salt marshes and pickleweeds, and salt water silvered by smelt. They fared on abalone and blue elderberry, western chokecherry, periwinkle, oaks, all flourishing, grace-filled, transitory. If I were a weaver, I would gift you a basket made of sandbar, willow, and tule, bright as cinnabar. But I can only write this poem, a tributary, to carry the weight of water as it flows and hefts the meaning of you, giver and taker, and everything that I knew. And this next poem is about journeys and migration, and it's titled A Short History of Journey. The fault, dear Arcturus, is not in your star. I'm afraid we misread the swells like explorers mistaking one continent for another. Columbus stretched out Asia eastward until Japan almost kissed the Azores. The Chinese treasure fleet had been mothballed long before Magellan set to sea. In other words, they were imprecise and they perished. Behold the flight of birds on rarefied air, from breeding ground to wintering ground. Behold intention and its kin, precision. Be that as it may, we were always meant for motion. See how the Silk Road was paved with horses' bones, and more than smuggled silkworm, it brought sugar, silver, paper, utter world changer. See how the spice trade flourished, shoring up an empire. Its galleons, implacable bearers of a slave trade from Manila to Acapulco. The world got its cinnamon, its cocoa, its cassia and cardamom, its lapis lazuli and its balas ruby. Ancient and sapphire veined, we got wanderlust. And the bravest of us looked up and remembered everything. The fixed star, the dippers, the king, the queen, the bear keeper, rubescent and fourth brightest in all the night sky, dearest. Remembered also the cardinal of old fields and every roadside, brilliantly blue and sometimes true, in the same night sky, roaming its way home. I will read one more short poem. Is that okay, Diane? And then I will read my Half Moon Bay poem towards the end. This poem is still untitled. It's part of a larger work with my fellow Academy of American Poets Laureate Fellows. And it's about what it means for us to be Poets Laureate. Untitled. I was taught to gather only what belonged to me, to never pick wild flowers, but instead commit to memory the shape and sound of what they shelter. Painted lady, bumblebee. When I say speak poetry, I mean know the language of wild and fragile things. Speak of flight and firelight, how to measure a wingspan, a lifespan, a split second that changes everything. Carry each other, the poet says. This matters more than anything. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Aileen.
so much, Aileen. And I'm going to encourage people to unmute and clap loudly and talk to Aileen.
Yay!
Wonderful. Thank you.
Aileen, I just loved that you were, especially in the second one from last, talking about the history, the voyages, and how Japan, in some view, almost touched the Azores. I mean, that was really, really cool. Love that.
Thank you so much. And now I hope to read your work. And also, I'm collecting poems. It's going to be one of my final projects. Is it okay, Diane, to share it?
Absolutely. I was just going to suggest that you might want to put links into the chat.
Yes.
So that we could.
So I'm collaborating with several local agencies, and this will also sort of serve as a directory of local poets. So if you have I am poems, it may be too simple for this group already, but if you have poems about ancestry, family, identity, please send them to me. I will drop my email here, and we hope to put it up hopefully by May. And hopefully we get a grant to also have a print, a print copy for everyone.
Is there
Aileen, I'm thinking of people who might want to submit and wondering if the poems need to be previously unpublished or not.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. It can be published already. Just let me know where it first appeared, and we'll be sure to credit them, and also your bio and photo.
Is there a limitation, a geographical limitation for entries? I mean, if we don't live in, are there counties that we need to be living in?
Since the San Francisco Bay Area is very connected, I will also include poems from the San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay, so that would be like Santa Clara County, San Mateo County, San Francisco, East Bay, or Peninsula. Are you thinking Peninsula?
Lisa, it's up to, we talked about this before, but
officially it's 7 counties all the way up to, Napa. Yeah.
Okay.
But that's up to Aileen to define the scope of the project. But yeah, it would be all the counties that touch the bay.
I just wanted to say one thing to Aileen because I love her poetry, and she has such a fantastic skill to marry nature and love and relationships, but most of all to talk to, I think, anyone who reads or listens to her poetry. Most of all, she talks to our souls and to our hearts. And I am so grateful whenever I listen to Aileen and whenever I read her poetry. She is the best.
thank you, Elise. Thank you.
Actually, I just thought of one question in relation to your project. Are you looking for verse of a particular length, short, long, in the middle? I mean, does it matter?
Length wouldn't matter because it's going to be posted on a website. But just the formatting, just please keep it simple because we'll be working with a volunteer web designer.
Okay, and I loved your poetry. It's so rich, and this is the first time I remember hearing you, and I'm still trying to kind of take it all in and process it. And, it comes back out in different ways, but it was really lovely.
Thank you so much.
I really love the way you interwove the Ohlone history. It's so important to where we in Santa Clara County and San Benito counties live. It's a part of the land. Which is so important to everyone, those of us now living here. But the way it comes through in your poetry is to remind us there were people living here before and that they left in the land their presence. I can feel it in the poems, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jade.
I also really loved, it's rare to hear poetry that sounds quite so much like the ocean really feels. And like what it really feels like to kind of be from near the ocean. It was really lovely to hear poetry that was so much like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Heather.
Aileen, that one where you're going back by sea, did I mishear it? Were you returning to was it something like a return to the Philippines by boats? I guess I might have misheard.
I think you're talking about the one where I left something and
Yeah.
hopefully it's still there.
Right. Okay.
I'm talking about a rare shell. It's a reminder. Maybe I don't want this to kind of sound preachy, but to not pick stones or shells and avoid it because they're part of a very important ecosystem.
Right.
Great. I was particularly moved by your statement, something along the lines of, you don't pick flowers, but you somehow capture their sound or their soul or whatever. Very, very moving. I like that very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to mention also the connection to language in the poem that has slavery in it. The words that you're using about the sort of products that came out of that are all so luscious and beautiful, and yet they're talking about this painful, horrible thing. And I'm still catching my breath from that. It just made it more painful to have the beauty like cardamom and other things like that paired so expertly.
Thank you, Veronica. I believe we're all products of trauma and grace in equal measure. And I see it in your poetry as well, and in Lisa's. And I'm looking forward to hearing other readings as well tonight. Thank you.
Aileen, I just wanted to mention that you said you didn't want to be preachy, and what I found was there was zero preachiness in your poetry, and yet so rich in history and social awareness. And from my perspective, it's very difficult to write about the subject matters that you write about without being preachy, and you pull it off magnificently. And I really appreciate that as a listener. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Aileen, I so admire how you have music and concrete sensory specifics in all of the work. And my own bias is that's really why this kind of tonal blend comes through, where there isn't any one, competing drive. We hear praise and we hear pain, and each reader can experience those, and possibly differently for the same poem. Hearing some of these poems more than once, each time I'm more appreciative of that gift that you're giving us through them. So much admiration, and I'm looking forward to this kind of slow rollout where it's not like Eileen's last Laureate ship reading, but we get to have, a sequence of these and savor each of them.
Thank you, Lisa. That means your support has always meant a lot to me. Thank you.
And Aileen, it's just so nice to see your face after just receiving emails from you and reading things. It's just lovely to hear your voice. Thank you for being with us.
Hi, Carol. I didn't even see you earlier. Hi.
Unfortunately, I snuck in late. I thought the reading was going to start at 6, but apparently you started earlier.
Well, thank you again, Aileen, and thank you all of you for participating. We're going to stop recording in a moment. Those of you in the Zoom room, please stay online if you'd like to take part in the open mic. Thanks to all our YouTube listeners. Please tune in for our next regular Coastside Poetry event on Tuesday, February 8th, when we'll welcome East Coast poet Anna Evans, editor of the poetry journal Mezzo Cammin and publisher at Barefoot Muse Press. That brings us to the end of tonight's recorded program. Thanks so much for joining us at Coastside Poetry and for helping to keep the lamps of poetry burning.